Hi, everybody. This is Karen Schaal, and welcome to the Karen Schaal podcast, where we expand the mind and grow the heart. In this episode, we're building on everything we've explored so far. This is where we begin to create your brilliance practice, one grounded in science, gratitude, and the intention to live from the fullness of who you really are. We have discussed in this series how we grow into our brilliance through rhythm, reflection, and aligned action. Now it's time to bring all of that together into a practice that's uniquely yours. Let's do this. You've already been growing more into your brilliance in small ways by listening, reflecting, and asking deeper questions. You've remembered your brilliance. You've noticed how the world pulls at your attention. You practice protecting your peace by creating healthy boundaries and learning how even tiny actions can spark massive change. So let's start with the basics. You already have a practice. Whether it's conscious or not, your life is filled with repeated actions, rituals, and routines. The way you start your day, the thoughts you revisit, the habits you lean on. The real question is this: is the way you're living right now actually working for you? Because here's the truth. Practice creates patterns in your life. It builds routines. And those patterns, those routines that are created through practice, shape the direction of your life. That makes sense, right? Tony Robbins, a popular self-help guru, says, you become what you do most of the time. And he's right. And we're not looking at doing anything dramatic. In fact, it works best when what you do for personal development is consistent and simple. So how do you actually begin to build a practice that supports your brilliance? You start by anchoring. Anchors are the grounding points in your day, simple, intentional moments that bring you back to center. They help you create rhythm and steadiness, even when life feels chaotic. Think about the anchors on a boat. When storms roll in or tides shift, that anchor is what keeps the boat from drifting into danger. It doesn't remove the chaos around it, but it offers steadiness within it. Your daily anchors do the same thing. They're small, purposeful moments that keep you tethered to your center, your truth, and your intention, no matter what's swirling around you. It's like the street lights that click on as dusk settles in. They don't stop the night from falling, but they mark the way home. Anchors in life do that too. They're small messages to your system that signal safety and security. Let's look at the three most powerful types of anchors: mental, emotional, and behavioral, and what they look like in real life. Mental anchoring is about helping you show up with clarity and intention. It's what keeps your thoughts from spinning off in 100 different directions. When you anchor mentally, you choose to direct your attention towards what's true, helpful, and aligned with your values. It's not about pretending that everything is fine. It's about widening your view, asking questions like, what else could be true? Or if someone I love was going through this, what would I say to them? These shifts don't erase difficulty. They actually open up new possibilities. Wendy Wood, a leading behavioral scientist, found that a huge portion of our daily actions, more than 40%, aren't conscious decisions. They're habits. That means nearly half of your day may be spent on autopilot. And while that can be helpful for efficiency, if your life feels out of balance, reclaiming even a fraction of that 40% can be life-changing. You may have heard me talk before about brushing your teeth as a great time to ground your thinking. But here's something I do in the morning that's become a kind of mental anchor. I drink from a glass that has a clear glass bead at the base. Over time, that little detail has become something more. When I see it, I pause. I center myself. It reminds me to begin with clarity and presence. That bead is now a signal to start the day in alignment. And you can do this too. Try keeping a glass of water next to your bed. And as you take that first sip in the morning, ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? Or what's one thing I want to handle with clarity? You're hydrating your body and anchoring your mind. 2 benefits in one. And all of it is built around something you already do. So whether it's a question, an object, or a quiet moment, this is mental anchoring in real time. It's a gentle cue to focus your thoughts, reclaim your attention, and return to what really matters. A lot of mental anchoring is steeped in awareness, which we will be covering in our next series. Emotional anchoring, well, that's a big deal. I mean, anyone who has lived long enough knows what it feels like to be at the mercy of your emotions. And so emotional anchoring is all about learning to manage your emotions rather than letting them manage you. It's a practice of being present with your emotional experience long enough to understand it, process it, and then choose an appropriate response. This doesn't come naturally for most of us. In fact, every cell in your body may want to leap into action like a wild dog on a leash, snapping back, defending, shutting down. That's normal. That's biology doing its job. But with emotional anchoring, you practice something different. You give yourself a small moment of space, and that space can change everything. I love the signs in the London subways. They say, mind the gap. And that's really what we are doing here. We are paying attention to that small window, that small gap of opportunity to choose a reaction or a response. Daniel Goleman, who popularized the concept of emotional intelligence, talks about this as the stop method. Stop. Take a breath. Observe. Proceed. That one tiny pause interrupts the emotional chain reaction, giving your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, a chance to weigh in before your emotions take the wheel. I've learned this through experience. I used to think that acting quickly was a strength, but over time I've come to see the power of slowing down, of holding on to something emotionally charged just a little longer. I give myself time to process, to feel, and to wait for clarity. And honestly, it's kept me out of so much trouble. When I stop, when I mind the gap, I avoid heated arguments. I avoid saying something I'd regret 5 minutes later. It makes my life so much easier. And it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it. Because what you're doing in that moment is building emotional self-trust. You're proving to yourself that you can handle strong feelings without being ruled by them. That's not weakness by any means. That's strength. And here's a deeper magic. The more you practice emotional anchoring, the more your whole life begins to shift. You start to approach challenges with less fear. You respond to conflict with more grace. You feel your emotions instead of fearing them, and that changes everything. Over time, emotional anchoring deepens your relationships, boosts your sense of well-being, and actually reshapes the way you see yourself and the world around you. Emotional anchoring might look like taking 3 deep breaths before sending a text, or stepping outside for a couple minutes when you feel anxious, or journaling instead of reacting when something hits you hard. This type of emotional anchoring is actually quite simple in concept, oftentimes quite challenging to implement, but the impact you will experience on your overall well-being when you begin to mind the gap is profound. So we have mental and emotional anchoring. What about behavioral anchoring? Well, this is the action component. And here's the thing. You're probably already doing some behavioral anchoring without even realizing. You sip a warm drink every morning to start your day. That's anchoring. Do you take a walk after dinner to unwind? That's an anchor. Do you light a candle when it's time to wind down? Anchor. If you've lived long enough, you've already created some rhythms. And that's the good news. You're not starting from scratch. You're continuing a story you've already been telling. This time, you can begin to do it with more awareness and intention. That awareness is what transforms behavior into practice. So instead of zoning out during your daily commute, what if you use that time, even just a minute at a red light, to take a few deep breaths, check in with yourself, or think of one thing you're grateful for? Instead of going straight from task to task, what if you built in a moment, just one, to reset between transitions? These rituals don't need to be complicated, and they just need to be consistent. Because the more you repeat a stabilizing behavior, the more your body associates that moment with regulation, with calm, with focus, with presence. That's behavioral anchoring in motion. MIT neuroscientist Anne Graybiel's research showed that repeated behavioral anchoring, right, literally carve neural grooves in the brain, pathways that make future repetition easier and more automatic. So when you hear people talk about rewiring your brain, this is part of how it happens. It's not magic, it's structure, it's science, and it works. Discipline plays a huge role here too, not as punishment or pressure, but as a quiet commitment to choose well, again and again. Discipline is what allows the anchor to hold even when the waters are rough. And as you strengthen these small behavioral anchors, you become someone who can return to calm more quickly, move through chaos more clearly, and show up with greater consistency in every area of your life. That's pretty remarkable, and it's all based on small choices. So let's recap. You are likely already using all three anchors, mental, emotional, and behavioral, all in some way. Bringing awareness to them is a first step toward shaping a life that feels aligned and empowered. This is your brilliance practice, not a set of rules, but a personal rhythm of remembering who you are, why you're here, and how you want to move through the world. A brilliance practice isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong rhythm built through daily choices, tiny moments, and intentional returns to what matters. And this is where it all comes together. Your mental anchors bring focus and clarity. Your emotional anchors build resilience and self-trust. Your behavioral anchors provide grounding through repeated, meaningful action. When you bring these into your awareness and practice them regularly, you create a life that holds you steady, even when the world doesn't. You start to live from the inside out. So please don't underestimate what you've already done just by showing up for these conversations with me. Listening, reflecting, noticing. That's the start of everything. If you take just one thing away from this series, please let it be this. You don't have to hustle for your brilliance. You were born with it. But it's your practice that helps you live it. Discovering those personal anchors to stabilize yourself, provide balance and stability. This is the beginning. Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." I believe that step, before that step is even taken, there is a choice. So I want to thank you for choosing to be here, for the positive choices you are making for yourself, for your journey, and for all the quiet and courageous ways you've said yes to growing. It does not go unnoticed, so thank you. I'm super excited about our upcoming 5 podcast series on awareness. Becoming aware totally transformed my life, and I promise you, it will yours as well. On a final note, as always, if this episode or this series on brilliance resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe and do share it with someone who may benefit. Feel free to connect with me at Karen Schaal. Until next time, this is Karen Schaal wishing you and yours all the best. Bye-bye.